So how else do you advertise? That little drop down that we looked at earlier, we're just going to go back in there, and this time we're going to select Create Ads. Here, if you're spending less than £800, you're limited to creating one advert for one campaign with one ad set at a time. So while that is it's still a really useful advertising tool and you can do very specific targeting, if you're looking to do any A/B testing or wider campaigns, you're going to need to use what's called the Power Editor. So I'm going to take you step by step how to use this tool first, and then we'll go into the Power Editor for those of you who want to be running bigger campaigns where you have multiple audiences and multiple ad copy that you're maybe testing for performance against one another. But there's certain things that stay exactly the same no matter what. And if you look down the side here where it says campaign, then ad set and ad, that process stays the same in Power Editor. That's how everything is separated there too. And the first thing you would decide is what is your campaign. So I'm just going to call this campaign Test 1. And as before, what we're going to do is we're going to target an objective of conversions on the page. Now that may not be your number one objective at this point. I'm a big fan of running 3-tiered ad campaigns, and what that means is that you do your first advertisement just to get some content in front of a new audience to warm them up and to get them to like you. You then retarget the people who read that content with a very simple click ad, which is about driving traffic from Facebook to your website. And then you would retarget again with a much more salesy kind of product or service launch advert and see if you can get them to convert. So that kind of 3 steps to warming them up. So you may start with a brand awareness campaign, traffic driving, and then follow that up with conversions. But there are obviously lots of others we can do here as well. And lead generation is one in particular that's very useful if you want to do a bit of data collection and get people's names and email addresses. But let's just start with conversion first of all. Now you'll see the option here to create a split test, just to warn you again that that has a minimum spend of £800. So I'm going to skip that for the moment. The first thing I need to do here, now that I'm in the ad set section, you'll notice that we've moved on to section 2 now, is I need to find the correct pixel that's going to measure my conversion. So for this one, I'm going to select webinar registration. Now all that means is I've put that code on my thank you page for webinar registrations, and so that Facebook knows that whenever someone comes from my advert and lands on the thank you page, that means that they have registered, and so I can count that as a conversion. So I'm running adverts, let's say in this instance, to drive people to a landing page to sign up for a webinar, and I want to work out how much it costs me to get people to convert and actually register for that webinar. So I'm not interested in clicks here, I'm interested in registrations, and you can see how that's a much more powerful metric. And now we move on to audience, and you have so much control here, and you'll be very surprised at how targeted and specific you can be. So let's start with this first box. This is where we would put in our custom audiences and our lookalike audiences. And if you've not seen them before, here's where you can find them. So we're back in Ads Manager, and this time we're going to go into this menu. And by the way, I would bookmark the Ads Manager, that would make life much easier for you. But if we go in here, we are heading straight for audiences. Okay. Now here what we need to do is create an audience, and here I'm going to select custom audiences first, and we've got loads of options. So first of all, there's a customer file, which is where you can upload a CSV file of email addresses or mobile phone numbers and many other things, and Facebook will match those with current Facebook users, enabling you to target them with advertising. You can get website traffic, so anyone who's been on your website and then returned to Facebook will be tracked for you. So you can create a custom audience of website visitors. If you have an app, you could track people who've been using your app or who have signed up for your app, and then again target them with advertising on Facebook. And then the last one here is for engagement, and that's reasonably new but very interesting. So let's just take a second to look at that one right now. So this lets us create custom audiences based on user behavior. So the first one I would say that's very interesting is this video one. So what we can do here is we can choose to create a custom audience of people who've viewed at least 3 seconds of your video, 10 seconds, or you could go on percentages. Now this could work fabulously well for you if you've got a great little video that people have watched that maybe mentions your product or service. And if you can get enough people to watch that video, why not target those that got at least halfway through with a follow-up advertisement, which again is just kind of driving them straight through to a conversion page where you just get them to sign up. So again, that's part of a kind of 3-tiered process, or maybe even 2-tiered for some of your warmer audiences, where you get that engagement first, you track that engagement, and then you retarget the most engaged visitors with a follow-up sales advertisement. For our purposes, we're just going to look at the uploading a file. Now you can either import straight from MailChimp, so if that happens to be your email marketing platform, you can pull in everyone straight from there, or you can just choose a file. So these are all the options that you could use to target a specific audience. What we would use most often is the email option. And all you need to do here is upload your file, name your audience, and Facebook will take you step by step through uploading your custom audience. And then they will sit here ready for you to use. Now the other thing that you can do with a custom audience is create what's called a lookalike. So you may start with, let's say this one, of people who've engaged with one of our business's videos. You identify the country that you want to target. And then how closely do you want this lookalike audience to represent that original audience that you're basing it on? And I would always leave this at 1. I would never increase that. I want to keep it as targeted as closely as possible. And then I would just click create an audience. And all you're doing is kind of filling up your library of custom and lookalike audiences ready to place your advertisements targeting them later. And once you've created them, this is where you can just select them from this drop-down menu. The other thing you'll start to build up the more you advertise is what's called a saved audience. So if you've spent ages targeting someone through job titles, interests, age, gender, postcodes, whatever it might be, make sure that you save that audience, and that way you can come back in and just use it straight off the bat without having to fill it in each time. And that lives under saved audiences. So those are 2 options for you that once you get cracking with it, you don't have to keep doing this over and over again. A good example of that is when I was working with a local authority, we input every single postcode for that local authority to find out how many of their constituents were using Facebook. So instead of having to do that every single time, we did it once and then saved that audience for them, and it made it much easier later on. Okay, I'm not going to select any of the custom audiences right now because I want to take you through all of the different targeting options that we have. Now the first one is location. So it's already defaulted to United Kingdom, but I could go in here and get very specific. So I've already mentioned postcodes. I could put in a specific postcode and you'll see it'll start to bring up postcodes that you can select. And then I could advertise there. If that's too specific, I could drop a pin anywhere on the map. And then once I've dropped my pin, I can decide how many miles radius do I want it to be. Do I want it to be very small? Do I want it out to 50-mile radius, which takes it much wider? Or I could just type in a particular city or town. So in this instance, I'm going to put in London. And again, I get the mile radius. I'm going to take that down slightly to just 10-mile radius. And don't forget this drop down at the top here. That gives you the option to target by everyone who's already in this location, people who live within that location, people who recently visited that location, and people who are traveling. And so these are calculated based on the information that Facebook has on you, on the GPS on your phone app, and where you check in at, where you most often post from. Facebook can build up a very clear picture of which of these categories you fall into in terms of the location that's being targeted. So this might all feel a little bit Big Brother to you at the moment, but remember, this is all anonymized, so advertisers don't know who you are. They can just target you really specifically. And I'm afraid that that is kind of part of using social media nowadays, is that you have to get comfortable with very targeted advertising. So right now I've selected London, and you'll see here that I can go into the age range, and I could play around with that. I could target younger people. Let's say we're targeting this for my webinar, so I'm going to pick 22 and over to start with. I'm going to do one audience maybe just targeting women. I could do the same audience targeting men and then compare the two. The reason I'm targeting women is because it's part of a Women in Business campaign, so it makes sense to target women. Now, detailed targeting, this is where we can get really digging deep about who it is we're trying to reach. So we start off with demographics. One of the ones I'd like to highlight is education. So if you are trying to target, say, graduates, you can target people by the specific undergraduate years. So that's great if you want to get people engaged with your brand before they graduate, so that they already like you, know about the opportunities within your company, and that makes it much easier to recruit from that talent pool going forward. So you could select specific years, fields of study, which exact university they went to, and that you can really drill that down. Now there's lots of other things, as you can see in here, that we can target by. Again, one of the other ones I'd like to highlight is parents. So I can target parents with children of very specific age groups, including expectant parents and all parents. So depending on what your product or service is, you could select this as well. And again, it's very specific and it's based on the information that we give Facebook. And even if you're not giving Facebook information, people related to you may well be. We can target by interests. As you can see, it's quite wide. Behaviours, and even more. And what I would say to you here is, if you're not sure where to start, because there's lots of options, why not try starting to just type things in? So for example, I might type something in like small business owner, and this will give me multiple options. So I could target people who've studied being a small business owner, who are interested in it, or if that is their title, or they're an employer of small business owners. That doesn't really make sense. I might put in job titles and employers if I was targeting that one. Now you'll notice here that at the side, it's starting to say that my potential reach is now less than 1,000 people. So I'm not going to be able to run this advertisement until I've boosted this up a little bit. So I'm going to really widen this out, and you'll notice that as soon as I put my mouse back in there, it's starting to suggest related things. So co-founder, owner and CEO, small business employers. Ooh, it's really narrow now, isn't it? Let's see if I can widen out interests. Federation of Small Federation of Small Businesses as an interest. Let's select that. Good. Now I've got 2,200 people, so I'm starting to widen it out a little bit. Now, if you had too big an audience, if you were having the opposite problem, you can narrow that audience. So get all your big ticket items in there first, and then narrow by one particular filter to start to break down that audience. And you can exclude people as well. So this is a really good way for you to get very specific about who your target audience are. And remember, if you've spent a lot of time and you're really happy with it, you can save this audience so that you can access it at other times as well. Now, the other thing you can do here is you can target people based on have they liked your Facebook page or have they not liked your Facebook page. You can target people by being a friend of people who've liked your page and exclude people. So there's lots of opportunities here, again, to filter down to get the very specific target audience that you want. Now I'm going to leave this off for the moment because we've already identified a very niche audience, but you may need to play around with this depending on your business and depending on the target audience you're trying to reach.